Hello everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. Now that I've owned the Tundra TRD Pro for several weeks, I have a lot to share with you. Things I like, things I'm not too crazy about. So let me go through everything with you, the exterior, the interior, the engine, the feel, all that stuff that you need to know to decide whether this is the right truck for you. Let's go. Welcome back. So here is my 2022 Tundra TRD Pro. Again, there are many things I really do like about the truck. In fact, there are many things I love about the truck, but there are also equally some frustrating things, and I want to tell you as an owner, because my experience driving this as an owner is quite different than when I used to drive these things as a part of the media drive. So first of all, for the exterior, you already know things that people like and do not like about the Tundra TRD Pro. And I can tell you that they really need to work on this grille for next iteration of Tundra TRD Pro, because the facelift version should come out in 2027 or 2028. I think most of us are not crazy about this big grille, especially the lower valence here. Thankfully for a Tundra TRD Pro, I do get this color coordinated surrounding, so that's much better. But they need to make this smaller, much like what we find in Sequoia TRD Pro. That's a lot better looking design. I know that many of you guys who bought the non-TRD Pro version just had this painted. I agree, it looks a lot better. But other than that, I don't really use this fog lamp here because this only works when your high beam is on. You can't just use this by itself. And you can't use this when the headlight is in the low beam mode. So it's kind of useless, because how often do you actually get to use high beam if you're living in a big city like I do here in Vancouver? Other than that, headlight is actually quite bright. No issues with any of the stuff here. You guys already know that I had to replace the TRD Pro decal on the other side, the emblem I should say, because he had a defective reverse D, and that was all fixed, and Toyota was very good about fixing it. And I did a whole video on how that might have happened and how to prevent it. So take a look at that video if you haven't watched already. Once again, these kind of minor defects happen once in a while. Not very often for Toyota, but you know, even Toyota is managed by humans, so these things can happen. I still do believe that they have the best quality overall. I'm happy with the fit and finish in terms of exterior, the paint job, the overall panel fit and alignment has been all good. I think the paint job and the gaps could be a little bit better, but that would improve usually on the second year. So if you're buying a 2023 or 2024 Tundra, I would say all of the exterior quality stuff will improve at that point. So I'm not too worried about that. I do want to point out the Tundra TRD Pro came with a rock slider or rock roller, which was like a tubing that was underneath the truck that is tucked right against the body, and it's really good for off-roading, but useless to use as a stepping board to climb into the truck. So I had that replaced with a traditional TRD running board, which is way better. This is actually quite expensive, but super grippy, and now I can step in and out of the truck with ease, and so could my family. I did not change the tires yet because I don't keep my vehicles very long. Most likely I'm changing the Tundra TRD Pro to a Sequoia TRD Pro as soon as allocation opens up, which is the next 6 months. So I don't want to modify too much or spend too much money on it. If I decide to keep this longer, I will definitely put a bigger or larger tires on here. But I can tell you that these Falcon tires are surprisingly good. These are not true off-road tires, but they're more like a hybrid street/off-road tires, and they are very quiet and smooth and rise really well. So if you value a ride in city driving or highway driving, don't change the tires, because these are immensely quiet and beautifully designed. I really like these tires for daily drive. If you want to do some serious off-roading, yes, go ahead and change that to KO2 or some other off-roading tires that are most likely better than the Falcon ones that we have here. This is the Wild Peak AT, by the way, AT3W, especially made for the Tundra TRD Pro. Moving to the back, you can see the TRD exhaust, and actually this is one of the best part of the TRD Pro. It has a really nice growl sound to it. I'll show you that a little bit later on. And yes, there is a fake engine sound or exhaust sound that comes into the interior as well. But even the exterior has a pretty good sound to it. Believe me, it's worth having the Tundra TRD Pro just for the sound effect. I have installed this optional bed step, which you have to kind of kick it to get it out. And this is almost required because there's no way to step into the bed without this. But oftentimes I forget to kick it back in. So it's not the best equipment. I think Toyota really should have just integrated a step in here like GM has done. I think that would have been better design. Otherwise, moving to the back, I know we don't get the multi-functional tailgate like we do in the competitors, but for me, it's not a big deal because simplicity is good. I have a lot of stuff in the back here right now because I'm using it like it should be. And I really like the composite bed because it's actually very quiet, it's light, and obviously adds to the fuel efficiency because it's not so heavy. And this bed mat that we have, which is option equipment, on most Tundra came standard with my TRD Pro here in Canada, is a must. You have to buy this. It's worth every penny because it's heavy. It dampens the sound of the bed area, and nothing slides. Everything sticks like a glue with this mat. Even when it's dirty, it still sticks. So absolutely necessary for anyone who needs to haul stuff in the back of the truck. I do think the tailgate is still a bit heavy. It's lighter than before, but it's a bit heavy and it requires a fair amount of effort to open and close. So that's my complaint. They need to fix that for next round of facelift. My biggest complaint right now is the actual tonneau cover, which has improved for 2022 because they're using backflip as the manufacturer for this cover now, as opposed to the heavy version we had last year. So it's light and easy to move and to flip, but the quality is not very well made. Some of the plastic pieces fell out a couple times here and also inside. And then there's some trims that are bulging out because it doesn't fit properly. And again, some of the plastic pieces inside just comes out while we're flipping through this panel. So this is probably the worst accessory in terms of quality. There's nothing wrong in terms of functionality. It's actually well designed and easy to flip around. You do have to keep in mind that if you keep on flipping this, you eventually get to the point where you have to put this against the window and you're gonna latch it in place. So if you have something big, like I had to do a couple of days ago, then you're going to lose the view in the back completely. Now, if you have a digital rear view mirror, then it's okay because the camera is still clear. But here in Canada, Tundra TRD Pro does not come with a digital rear view mirror. I think it does come in the US. So that's something to keep in mind. To be honest, if I can have it my way, I would not buy the OEM tonneau cover and go with a Diamondback or something else that is probably better designed. So that's my biggest complaint, and I might actually end up selling this and changing it if I keep the Tundra for much longer than a year or so. Now, before I go that way here, let me come back to this side. There is a button you can press here to open the rear. And so I don't use that very often because I just forget to do that. And one interesting thing is that if you keep the car locked and you open the rear tailgate by hand here, and then you close it again, then the passenger area stays locked. So that's actually really cool because you can lock the door, come out, open the back, remove some stuff, close the tailgate, and everything stays locked. You don't have to go to the front again or use your remote to relock the passenger compartment. So that's actually a really smart idea that they've done that. So that's pretty well for the interior. You can actually step in here to climb in, but this is too high, so that's very difficult. This is a standard hitch in the back. I haven't done anything with it for now. Everything else works the way it's supposed to. I still don't like this camouflage design. It looks cheap, not so much because it's a camouflage, but just this kind of a digital camo, they call it. It doesn't look right. I think they should change that for facelift in 2027 or 2028. Now let's take a look at the interior. Let me show you things that I like and things I'm not too crazy about. And then I'm also going to tell you about the most important thing about this truck, which is the engine and the transmission. Both of which have improved, but there are also things that needs to improve further. Okay, so now I'm inside the Tundra TRD Pro, and I didn't think I would like the red interior, but I'm actually growing to love it. Typically speaking, I'm not a fan of red interior, but in this Tundra TRD Pro, it's actually subdued, and it looks really, really good because contrasting with the black trims. Because not everything is red inside, and having this beige off-white headline helps a lot because you got a whole bunch of a different color mixed in and blended in well. I do really like the 14-inch infotainment system. It's huge, and once you get used to it and you go back to some other car that is 10-inch or 12-inch, it's hard to get used to it because this is so lovely and beautiful. However, this software needs to be improved. There's lots of small issues that you don't notice until you start driving this car day in, day out. Most of it is not to do with the Apple CarPlay because that actually works really well. And once again, the big display helps a lot. But once you get into the Toyota menu, that's when some of the issues starts up. For example, if you are in the audio and you're trying to change the audio sources, you have to first enable the audio and then change the sources. And even when you change the sources, it doesn't always remember what you had last time. When you start up the engine again, it often defaults back to the Apple CarPlay and whatever you were playing within the Apple CarPlay, and it forgets that I actually chose the radio, and I have to constantly go back and pick the radio again. So that's something that's a little bit tricky. And if you happen to plug in someone else's phone in here, then you have to go into the source and choose again. Whereas in the past, with the previous versions of Toyota system, you can just plug it in and kind of automatically switches to that particular phone. Now maybe you don't want to have that automatic switching, but regardless, there's just too many buttons you have to press to change the source of the audio. So those are some of the things that I don't like. And also navigating the menu is okay, but not great. I've seen better system. Because the fonts are too big, you have to keep on scrolling quite a bit. There's so much information here, there's so much space here, they could have made the font smaller and squeeze a little bit more. That way we don't have to scroll everything, and that just requires too many steps. So I think the entire software needs to be refreshed somewhat. It's fast and quick and responsive, so there's no issue there, but it's not the most user-friendly system from my experience. In terms of button, I don't know why they decided to give us a temperature control here, but radio button here. So if you're not used to it in the beginning, you keep doing this to control your temperature, thinking that's the HVAC control, when in fact this is the volume control. Why didn't they give us a volume control here and then heating and ventilation control here? I'm not quite sure. This is kind of a Land Cruiser style, and it looks cool, but it's almost impossible to read the font even during the daytime because it's not lit up and it's kind of hidden behind the shadow here. So this area is also not the best design. The air condition does work really well, in case you're wondering. Even in hot climate that we had a couple of weeks ago has been great. And I will say that the stereo system on the Tundra TRD Pro, which is a JBL system, is significantly better than expected. It's better than the Bose system that we have heard in many other high-end vehicles like a Porsche, and it's definitely better than any other JBL system we've had in all of the other Toyotas we had, which includes the Highlander, the RAV4 Prime, and even compared to Lexus GX, Mark Levinson system, this one sounds actually better. Very clear in terms of audio and good bass, so you'll be absolutely happy with the stereo system if it's a JBL system you're going to get. What else? You'll notice that I have aftermarket wireless charger here as opposed to using it here, because this is very fiddly and you have to place it just exactly right to get it to charge, whereas this one's magnetic and I just have to snap on and start to charge, and I can see the display a lot easier. I do like the red accents on all of the black trims here, but the center console is my biggest complaint. This is flimsy, it's rattly, slippery, and as you can tell, just really super cheap looking. You can buy some aftermarket add-on to make it look better and also have a little bit of padding. But I just found this from my old Tacoma that I sold last year, and it fits almost perfectly. I just have to maybe cut off some corners, and so I use that over here, and I'll do something similar here as well. But the center console is actually pretty big. I got jammed full with stuff right now, and that actually works pretty good. And the cup holder is also good, but I don't know why this one is higher than this side. So I found that you can't put anything tall on this side, only on this one that you can put tall drinks. This is just too shallow. Thankfully, the storage here and also on the dash has a rubber bottom, so that's actually pretty good. It helps to keep the noise down, and you can throw coins and stuff, and it doesn't rattle. I do want to mention that there are some squeaks and rattles in the vehicle, which can be annoying, especially here at the door. Every time I grab my door handle and close the door, there's a fair amount of squeak sound over here and also inside, and that's going to be hard to fix because it's probably embedded inside the panel here. And sometimes I hear a bit of a squeak on the headliner, not too bad, but there's a little bit. So overall, it's better than expected for a first year model production, but in a Toyota, I would expect it to be completely rattle free, so that's one disappointment as well. What about the fuel efficiency or the fuel economy of this Tundra TRD Pro? Now, I've been away a lot, so I haven't been using this Tundra as much as I should, but I did let go of the first couple tanks, and then so I'm on the third tank, I believe, and it's showing a very dismal 11.7 miles per gallon. Now, this is all city driving with me moving stuff like furnitures and so forth because of our office move. So this is all short trip, heavy load items. So I'm not surprised that it seems to be really bad. But this is still just the first couple tanks. So I'm going to wait another few more tanks full of usage before I confirm whether this is in fact the city driving mileage, which I can't believe. A lot of people are reporting much better fuel economy than that. This is in miles per gallon. Let me see what it is in the Canadian format, which will be, let me switch over here. And that's 20.1 liters per 100 kilometers. That's how we describe it here in Canada. Either way, it's not very impressive. And so I'm going to have to keep an eye on it to see if that will improve. But let's see how the next couple of iterations will change the fuel economy. One of the most delightful surprises is this huge panoramic moonroof, which goes all the way to the back. Now, the reason why this is so delightful is the fact it's almost edge to edge. You can see right here, and then goes all the way to the edge here. And this part is pretty narrow compared to other vehicles. Usually the panel roof are a little bit smaller, and you don't get as much edge to edge this way or this way. But in this Tundra, it goes as close as you can get to the front without hitting some of these controls, and goes all the way to the back. And so when you open this, even with the glass closed, it feels very airy. And if you actually open the sunroof or the moonroof, then it feels even more so. It's kind of like a good compromise between having this type of moonroof and a convertible, because it doesn't replace a convertible, but with this huge opening, you get some of that impact or some of that feel. So I love my panoramic moonroof. It's one of the best things on this Tundra TRD Pro. Okay, now moving into the instrumentation here. I do love the digital instrumentation, but you only get a digital speedometer, not an actual analog style. Because the way they designed it is that the center portion stays the same, and only the left portion moves in terms of giving you more information or helping you to decide what functions to choose. So it's not a true digital instrumentation in a sense. Even though this whole thing is digitized, you actually can only control this portion here. This part, the center portion, and the right portion stays fixed. What a waste of space, because I don't need this entire right side taken over by these two small gauges when I would like to see this entire thing more configurable, like the way you find in many competitors' models, where you can adjust and move around this entire digital instrumentation. So that's a big miss, because this part is so small in terms of looking at the menu. It's just not very user-friendly. I also do find the 360 camera to be somewhat cool and actually quite practical. So if I activate that, you can see a 3D perspective view of the truck. But more importantly, when I back up, I can see the side of the truck as well, on both sides here, as well as the back. So this is actually quite useful, and you can pick many different ways to look at the back or the side. And I don't use it as often as I think I should, but obviously if I go off-roading, this will be very useful. I do like all the buttons on the steering wheel, but it is not simple to use in the sense that you have to kind of remember which function serves what purpose. But once you get used to it, it's totally fine. And of course, I do like the TRD steering wheel, which is also a logo here and a red line over here. The ventilation opening looks really big on all 4 locations, but if you look carefully, the opening is actually very small, and you have to push it all the way to the left to close it. And then otherwise you can control up and down, and it's reasonably good in terms of keeping the flow going. I do like these kind of simulated carbon fiber trim that's also on the door, but I don't know why they did not use this same material on the center console, because we have lots of black shiny plastic and they get scratched easily. If they just use this simulated aluminum or carbon fiber look trim on the rest of the center console, would have been just ideal. All the buttons here is easy to figure out. I did find out that if you turn on the rear light right here, which is a light just above the pickup bed in the back to light up the whole rear, then you'll find out that if you lock the vehicle and move away, it actually stays on. So you have to be careful, because it does not turn off after a set time in terms of the rear light. So that's something to keep in mind. Otherwise, the automatic high beam works great. I haven't used the steering heater because it's summer right now. But I remember last year when I was using on another Tundra, it was actually quite powerful and there was no problem with that. And this is a TRD light bar, which once again, I'm not using very often because you can only use this in conjunction with the high beam. In terms of the door design, it's pretty good. You can rest your arm here during the drive. It's a bit high for me, but it's still helpful. All of the buttons and switches work well, just like in all of the Toyotas, no issue with that. I think this small opening is kind of useless because it doesn't have a rubber backing as well. So if you put pen or something, it's rattly. It's very small. And you can put more bottles here, but this thing is a bit narrow, so I'm not sure about this design. I'm not too crazy about the narrow path for the map pocket and the fact that this divider actually cuts this map pocket into two, and so you cannot put something really long over here. But I'm just waiting for one of the aftermarket ones to design a proper rubber mat to go into all these crevices and cubby holes, and then it'll be a little bit easier to use. So that's the door, that's the interior. In terms of seating mechanism, beautiful seat, actually very comfortable, supportive. I have no issues. I will say that the seat do not rise too high. I have it on the highest position because I'm not super tall. I have lots of space in my head and it can go up much higher, but for some reason Toyota chose to keep it very low. That seems to be a bit of a legacy issue with Toyota. Like we found out in Tacoma, it's also a bit too low. So again, in 2027 or 2028, when they do a facelift, they need to adjust the power seat so this whole seat will come up a little bit higher, because I think for some people, they're going to find that it's a bit too low all the way through. By the way, these all-weather floor mats that came with the Tundra TRD Pro works really well. It's very dirty right now. You can tell that it goes edge to edge and goes all the way through, except it doesn't go super deep below the pedal, just because Toyota is always worried about these floor mats getting caught with the pedal. So I do think that the WeatherTech ones are a little bit better. I don't have them right now with me, but these are sufficient. They're good enough for now. Now let's look at the rear seat. What can I tell you? If you recall, Toyota did shrink the space in the back a little bit, so there's a little bit less leg room than before, but you can tell there's more than enough space out there. There's plenty of space for really anyone, even if they're super tall. No issue fitting in here, even with a panoramic roof on the top, which by the way, I really do enjoy having. No issue, the seats are comfortable, more than enough hip room, and the width and the back side are all good. Some trucks have a problem with the back side of the seat being too vertical and not comfortable. This one has just the right amount to recline, not too straight up and not too recline, but you cannot adjust it obviously because it's a pickup truck. In something like a Sequoia, you'll be able to adjust the reclining of the rear part as well. So this is all red seats in the back. As you can tell, once again, it's not super bright, so I do enjoy it. It doesn't get very dirty. You get the camel pattern on the seat as well. And the rear seats are also perforated to match the front seats, but these are not ventilated. Only the ventilation works in the front, which is either cooling effect or the heating effect. And it works very well compared to the seats on the 4Runner, which ventilates but do not cool. These ones are much better and it's quieter as well. So not much more to tell you about the rear seat, except there's no storage, as you know, underneath the seat because there's battery right here. So that's a bit of an oversight by Toyota, but you can get a little bit of a space in the seat behind here. Tiny amount of space over there, not very much, because this one also has a JBL subwoofer in the back, but it's better than nothing. So I say I could always use more storage space. So that's pretty well for the interior. Let me take you to the engine compartment and tell you whether or not I do like the new 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 engine or not. So here is the 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 with the hybrid mechanism. It's officially 3.4 liter, not 3.5, but Toyota markets as a 3.5. And this is perhaps the most controversial part of the Tundra because we lost the V8 engine. And many of you guys know how much I love the V8 engine and I still miss it. But with the hybrid system, it makes a huge difference because it has a lot more power and torque than the 3.4 without the hybrid. In fact, we have 437 horsepower, so it has more power and torque than the V8 engine. I would not suggest buying the standard V6 engine if you can avoid it, and buy the hybrid instead because it's definitely worth paying the extra to get that power and torque. With the hybrid system, I feel like it functions very similar to a V8 engine. In fact, when you step on the gas, you get immediate amount of torque, because with the turbocharger and the hybrid, the peak torque happens very early in the torque curve. So you get a good rush of the power and torque in the beginning, which makes you not miss the V8 so much. And even at higher RPM, as you're accelerating toward a highway speed, plenty of get up and go. So with a 3.4 liter hybrid, I don't miss the V8 so much. I do miss the feel of the V8, but not the power and torque, because this one has more of that. And once again, you can see the all of the orange cable behind the engine. That's for the hybrid system. And this is a very different hybrid system than traditional Toyota system, because it's designed to give you more power and torque as opposed to better fuel efficiency. It does improve the fuel efficiency by a little bit, but not as much as you think. And this was an interesting design choice by Toyota to create an engine that mimics the feel of a diesel engine in terms of torque, and then also the feel of the V8 engine in terms of the power. And they accomplished that from my perspective, so no complaints whatsoever. I have not heard about any of the turbocharger issue to do with the wastegate anymore. I really think it only affected the first couple hundred runs perhaps, and ever since then no one has been reporting this issue anymore. So I can consider that case to be closed, and that there will be no further issues to do with the turbocharger, so I wouldn't worry about that anymore. In terms of maintenance and being able to keep this car for hundreds of thousands of miles, people are still saying that V8 engine will last for a very long time and this might not, and that could still be true. I will admit the naturally aspirated engine is easier to maintain and most likely will keep longer years in terms of trouble-free time. Having said that, this engine has been over-engineered, and I really think that it'll be one of the best engines from Toyota in many years to come. So that's the engine discussion. Now what about things like transmission, braking, and the steering feel? First, something I'm not too happy about, and that is the transmission. The 10-speed automatic is a well-designed, well-engineered transmission, but the calibration is a bit off. What I mean by that is, as I am decelerating and coming to a complete stop, it shifts down to first gear, but there's a bit of a clunk sound. In other words, the downshifting is not as smooth as it can be. I believe that's a calibration error or software programming, so I'm sure they can get that sorted out, but it is not perfect in my Tundra TRD Pro. I'm not quite sure if that is to do with my truck only or is to do with all other Tundras. But I'm going to get another Tundra TRD Pro for a media drive. I'm going to compare the two side by side and see if that problem is to do with my truck or not. On the other hand, the brake is solid, works really well. It has just the right amount of pedal feel, so no complaints there. And finally, what I love the most is the steering feel and the steering mechanism. I was worried that moving from hydraulic steering to EPS or electric power steering, we would lose a lot of the sensation on the road. But it turned out that at least in my Tundra TRD Pro, thanks to some re-engineering of the suspension and the calibration of steering, it has a pretty good steering effort and a steering feel. It is still a little bit lighter than before, but in terms of sensation of the road, in terms of the feedback from the road, it's actually quite good, and the truck feels confidence in terms of where it's pointed and where it goes, and it stays very stable. The fork suspension in this Tundra TRD Pro is supposed to be soft sprung, but I'm finding it to be very stable, and around the corners and turns, I feel like this is more stable than non-fork suspension Tundra. So that's a bit of a surprise to me. So that combined with pretty accurate and quick steering gives it a lot more fun to drive fuel than expected. In fact, overall, this Tundra TRD Pro is more fun to drive than the Lexus LX600 I drove about a month ago, which is a big surprise, right? Because that vehicle is way more expensive than this one. But it's mainly because the LX600 does not have the hybrid system. It only has the normal 3.4 liter twin turbo V6. And the steering wheel and the steering feel on the LX is lighter than the Tundra. So I actually do prefer the feel of the steering in this Tundra TRD Pro. So the steering feel is good, the braking is solid, the transmission should be recalibrated, and the suspension is actually very well designed. So that's pretty good feedback in terms of overall driving feel. I do think that Toyota can do a little bit more calibration and minor adjustment in coming years, especially as it faces the 2027-2028 facelift. That's when they can make some of the bigger changes and make this truck even better than before. I really do look forward to driving the Sequoia TRD Pro against this one, because most likely that's the vehicle I'm buying after the Tundra TRD Pro, and perhaps Sequoia would not have some of the shortcomings I mentioned so far, but we'll find out very soon. So I hope this was very helpful for you in terms of giving you the full owner's report for the 2022 Tundra TRD Pro. When I get a media version of the Tundra TRD Pro in a few weeks, which is a solar octane version, I'll do a full comparison of the two models to see if there's any difference in terms of manufacturing quality or feel on the road, and that'll be a really interesting video to do as well. So for now, I'm gonna sign out, but if you're able to give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and subscribe, that'll be truly appreciated. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.